In the next section, you guys are going to learn how to just complete the square. I am not going to teach you how to solve yet, but just complete the square. Up here, the square was already completed for you. It was already nice and perfect. You could do it. But down here, you're going to have to learn how to complete the square. I would call this a level 3 problem. This is kind of the formula for you if you're concerned with formulas or you like formulas. It pretty much says you take the middle term, you cut it in half, and you square it. But let's go ahead and practice it together because that just makes it easier. On this page, on this example, problem 4, look what I say. Let's start by just learning how to make it a perfect square. We are not going to solve yet. We'll solve in the next problem. Problem 4. What value completes the square for x squared minus 10x? Justify your answer. Well, we don't need to justify. Okay? So what value completes the square? It's pretty simple. All you're going to do is you're going to take half of negative 10. Okay? So that makes negative 5. And then you're going to square that. And you're going to get a positive 25. That is the value that completes the square. Let's go to got it 4a. Now, we're not solving, I'm just teaching you how to complete the square. 4a, what is the value that completes this square? Ready? You take half of the positive 6, that makes 3, and then you square it. That makes 9. This is the value that completes your square. That's it. Let's move on and see, and this is it possible for more than one value to complete the square? Absolutely not, because you can only take half of a number and square it so many ways. Alright. Let's take a look at how to solve now. You see this big word solve? We're going to learn how to solve now by completing the square. These steps are really nice if you're a step person, but I like to kind of just apply. Maybe what I'll do on the next page is I'll try to keep these numbered. Okay? Step number 1. Step number 1. And if you like to write steps down, here's pretty much what the step number 1 back here, here's what it pretty much says. Get x squared and x on left. Alright, that means we got to move this positive 6 over. 3x squared minus 12x equals negative 6. Not too bad yet. Now step 1 also has something else, okay? You also have to divide if there's a number in front of x squared. Okay. I'm just kind of putting it in, regular language, step 1. Okay, get x squared and x on the left, which meant we moved the negative 6 over, or the 6 over and made it negative. Now we need to divide by the number in front of x squared. So we got to divide by 3. This is a really essential step if you want to do it right. So that's x squared minus 4x equals negative 2. Step 2. Step 2 on the back said complete the square by adding b over 2 squared to each side. Alright, well here's what you're going to do. You're going to take half of the negative 4. Okay, and that came right there. You take half of negative 4, you're going to get negative 2. And then you have to square negative 2 for me. Alright, that gives you a positive 4. This number needs to get added to the left and to the right. So, here's what I had, x squared minus 4x. Okay, change colors. You have to add 4 here. That equals negative 2. And you have to add 4 here. You must add it to both sides so you don't change anything. Well guys, you're almost done now. This side factors, and this side, negative 2 plus 4, is just a positive 2. Now if you're concerned about how this side factors, all you do is you write x here because it's the square root of x, and you write 2 here because it's the square root of 4. Now you might be wondering what kind of 2 is it? It's a minus 2. You want to know a secret as to where this comes from? It's right up here. Comes from that minus 2. That just drops right down in parentheses. It is the square root of 4, okay, and it is negative from this sign, But if you're wondering, you can always just bring this minus 2 and put it in right there where I'm pointing. Now, take a look at how problem 5 resembles problem number 3, when you had a perfect square. You just take the square root of each side now. Alright, square root of this side, square root of this side. You get x minus 2 over here. You get plus and minus. That's a big mistake right there. People forget that. The square root of 2. Alright, we've got to solve for x. So I'm just going to add this 2 over. Add it over. And my final answer is that 2 that I added over plus or minus my square root that I had. A little complicated. You could get a decimal if you want, but you do have 2 answers. You have 2 plus the square root of 2, and you have 2 minus the square root of 2. Let's try it one more time. Okay, step 1. Get x squared and x on one side. So 2x squared minus x equals, let's move this 3 over. It equals x plus 6, because we did minus 3 and minus 3. Okay, now we got to move this x over to this side. So we'll subtract x, 2x squared minus 2x equals 6. So far, so good. Now we need to make sure that we divide by the number that's in front of x squared. Okay, once you get x and x squared on the one side, make sure you divide by the number that's in front of x squared. That's going to give me x squared minus 1x equals 3. Step 2. You always take half of the x term. So half of negative 1 here equals negative 1/2. And then you have to square it. Well, 1/2 squared is positive 1/4. See this value? This value has to be added to both sides, here and here. X squared minus 1x. I'm going to change colors so it makes it obvious where it came from. Plus 1/4 equals 3 plus 1/4. Okay. Now, after you get this step, this would be, I guess we are following our steps, this would be step 3. You factor this side. And you add this side. Now when you add this side, 3 plus 1/4 is 13/4. On this side, the factored is just x. The minus sign comes down. And if you're wondering what the square root of 1/4 is, it's 1/2. But again, remember my little trick. Where could you just find negative 1/2? Where could you find negative 1/2? It's right here. So if you're ever wondering what number goes there, just look up there in the parentheses. This negative 1/2 and this negative 1/2, these will always match. Okay, it's the number 4 you squared, in other words. Step 4, take the square root of both sides. So we get x minus 1/2. We lose the parentheses. Equals plus and minus the square root of 13. But look now, it's only the square root of 13 and I put it over 2. The reason I have to put it over 2 is because there is a square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Take a look at this step, make sure you understand it. Make sure you ask tomorrow if you do not. Last step, guys, we've got to add 1/2 to each side. I'll change colors just so you make sure you know what I'm doing. Add 1/2. Final answer, x equals the 1/2 that you added over, plus and minus the square root of 13 over 2 that you had originally. Now this is perfectly fine with me. Just so you know, in college, they may put the numerators together, and they might put it over the denominator in one big fraction. The last thing we have to do is problem 6. Let's read what it says. Now you're going to learn how to use completing the square to put it into vertex form. You have already learned how to do this at a standard form. That was back, I believe, in the 4-2 notes, but now you're going to learn it using completing the square. And this is, I hope you all agree, this problem 6, this is in standard form, but I'm going to teach you how to make it into vertex form. Alright, if you like steps, just look for whenever you have these directions, it says write in vertex form, just follow my steps, okay? Step 1. Rewrite your equation, spacing it out like this. You do x squared plus 4x, you leave a blank, you put the minus 6 in, and you leave another blank, okay? So all I did is I separated the equation. I'm going to complete the square. Alright. Step 2. I have to take half of the positive 4, that gives me 2, and then I have to square that. That gives me a 4. Now, since we're working on this step 3, since we're working on the same side of the equation, whereas in the last page we weren't, we're going to write y equals x squared plus 4x plus 4, and that filled in that orange line, minus 6 plus this one. To balance our equation, if I do a plus 4 on the right, I need to do a minus 4 on the right to keep it balanced. Alright, let's rewrite this as y equals. Now watch what I'm going to do with these three terms. I'm going to factor them. And the negative 6 and the negative 4 is going to make a negative 10. Okay, the negative 6 and the negative 4 made a negative 10. I'm going to factor this. I'm going to use x plus 2. If you're wondering why x plus 2, because x is the square root of x squared, 2 is the square root of 4, but remember that little hint I told you, this 2 can just drop down. This is in vertex form, wasn't too bad. Okay, we also need it to vertex. Well, the vertex, you guys know in vertex form is pretty easy. It's opposite of this number, and it's what's on the outside. That's the vertex. And what's the y-intercept? Well, here's a hint for your y-intercept. It's the minus 6 from the very, very, very beginning. You guys see this minus 6? That's the y-intercept. Okay, if you want to draw an arrow so when you do your homework, you know where it came from. Alright, let's get this next problem done. What is this in vertex form? Same steps. Y equals x squared plus 3x. Leave a blank. Minus 6, leave a blank. Step 2, take half of 3. You get 3 over 2. Square it. You get 9 over 4. Step 3, rewrite x squared plus 3x plus 9 over 4 minus 6. Remember to balance. If you do a plus on the right, you need to do another minus on the right so it balances. Step 4. Rewrite it. Y equals, I'm going to factor these three things. It turns into x plus 3 over 2. Remember the 3 over 2 here drops down to the plus 3 over 2 down here. Negative 6 and negative 9 over 4 become minus 33 over 4. The vertex, you guys know this is in vertex form. The vertex is opposite here and regular of what's outside. Okay? And the y-intercept is what I told you in the beginning. It's that little trick. It's just whatever C is from the very tippy top.